25 million people continue to be exposed to asbestos in the workplace.
So there's a big cost to using asbestos in dollars and lives.
Research that goes into these decisions has to be directed by independent, unconflicted scientists.
It's not something that just affects workers, it affects everyone.
Saving one life is great, but saving many more is what I hope to accomplish.
Making a profit off of people's pain and lives is wrong.
We can't quit, not as long as there are hundreds of thousands of people still to be diagnosed.
Ban the asbestos once and for all.
Okay, this is the global panel on asbestos efforts. I want to correct something that I said earlier today, that the verdict in the manslaughter trial against Stefan Schmidt-Heine is expected on Monday. It's been postponed. The prosecutor, Mr. Colacci, is unable to be available at that time, and so that's been delayed a week. So it'll be April 15th that we'll find out what the judge has to say about the result of the manslaughter trial against the multi-billionaire owner of the Eternit Empire from Switzerland. All right, so the first speaker is Courtney Davis Hissong, Mesothelioma warrior.
Many of you here today may remember my father, Larry Davis. If you don't, he was a loud and dynamic motivator, and almost always in a race tee. He could light a fire under you and rarely took no for an answer. When he was diagnosed with testicular cancer in 2006, he didn't respond any differently. As it turns out, the doctors were wrong. From diagnosis to multiple opinions, a botched surgery, sepsis, rehab, colostomy, a failed reversal, another failed colostomy reversal, and finally, a new diagnosis, peritoneal mesothelioma. I watched my dad, who had overcome some of the toughest tests of endurance and perseverance, forced to fight an unworthy foe. A new fire grew within him. It consumed him, and it consumed me, as we had always been a team. The more he spoke out about asbestos, the more he became convinced that if his parents could be tested posthumously, they too would present with asbestos-related disease. My father's father and his father's father worked for National Folding Box, a paper company in New Haven, Connecticut. Unbeknownst to them, asbestos fibers were transferred from the stacks to their clothing and carried home to the family each night. The cigarettes they smoked to pass the time likely contained asbestos in the filters. During Dad's military service, he lived in army barracks and worked in buildings, many of which stand now, and also contain asbestos in the tiling, or in the floors, or in the ceilings. And when I was a baby, an attic remodel had him working long hours placing insulation along our roof and walls, yet another possible exposure to asbestos. And as my father started looking for answers, he also wanted solutions. He demanded action and accountability. And when he wanted something, you were going to listen. Imagine the surprise of the Simmons firm when my father called, not to check up on his case, but rather to announce he was going to start planning the first annual South Florida Miles for Meso before they had even completed their first event in Illinois. Coupled with his love of running, this race was a dynamic match. He was able to create a better system of outreach and fundraising, and I helped him start his online presence, Action Against Asbestos. He regularly met with his senators, representatives, his mayor, lawyers, and nearly every single person he came in contact with to share his story, and I did my best to capture it and spread the awareness on After a while, my dad stopped the chemo, the radiation, and the trials that tried to poison the cancer away. He started eating healthy and more natural ingredients, and we had a couple of decent, unexpected, prolonged years together, fighting the good fight, as he used to say. But the tumors continued to grow. He began to wither away, unable to do almost everything that he loved. Our last South Florida Miles for Meso was in February of 2012. He's pictured here with Linda and our friend Janelle. The last day I saw my father alive was on Father's Day. He died a few days shy of his 66th birthday. The toll asbestos took was too much for his body, too much for some of his friends, your friends, my friends. These losses are unacceptable. It's time we wake up, and as you know, the starting line is here in Washington. Congress and big business cannot keep using and importing asbestos and investing in lobbyists and spies to try to change our mind. The science and the facts are on our side, and I will remind them every chance I get. Recently, with the help of my husband, we have encouraged the Army and the Air Force in Alaska to take another look at their buildings. A large earthquake last November shook loose enough asbestos from the ceilings that nearly 5 months later, these buildings are still closed. Many of our counterparts, the service members, the families, have no idea what the ramifications of asbestos are. At the community action meetings, I press officials to rethink their stance on leaving it alone. And my husband educates his colleagues on why they should not want to breach into these closed spaces. Privatized military housing problems are currently in the congressional spotlight and are giving us more of a platform right now for these discussions. It's time our elected officials realize that they could have put an end to so much suffering by banning asbestos already. So as we continue this race to ban asbestos here in the US, I am reminded of my father's flash and his ability to use his visibility to get people to work together for change. But no matter how long it takes and how turtle slow I am still here pushing for change and fighting our fight. Because his goal, my goal, probably your goal, since you're here, is to ban the asbestos once and for all.